Facing river jams with a marginal holding is one of the toughest spots in poker. But how did this hand happen? We face a button open from a regular and we decide to 3-bet ace-4 suited from the big blind. They call. Flop is ace-6 deuce two-tone and we decide to check. This hand can do either a bet or a check. And our opponent checks back. Turn is the 6 of clubs. Here we just want to play a low frequency big bet spot, but in this case we just always check our hand. And villain bets pretty big, already putting a ton of pressure to our weak top pair. But right now we still call. River is the 4 of diamonds and our opponent jams. So how to approach this bluff catching spot? Of course, this looks like a very polarized line. Definitely a 6 can be there, a flush can be there, even a boat perhaps. But would our opponent find a thin shove with ace queen, for example? Before deciding what to do, let's see what the solver does. And we can see that we have a pure fold with our hand. But should we take it as granted? So obviously one way could be to just see the solver as an oracle and see pure fold as just a fold. We see it as a final verdict without any interpretation. Another way is to see the solver as an instrument. We see the pure fold. This means that my hand has not enough equity against the equilibrium range. And let's note this last part of the sentence. So we can start to have a dialogue with the solver. And we start to see EV, in this case the EV of the call, as a specific function of how my opponent is far away from the equilibrium. So the further they will be from one side or the other of the spectrum, the more the EV of the call is going to shift. If they're under bluffing, the EV is close to 0 but slightly negative. In theory, if they're under bluffing now, it's going to be significantly negative. If they're over bluffing, on the other hand, our hand is going to print money. There are 3 places where solver and human diverge here. First of all, in the value region. This is a highly polarized spot considering the size that my opponent chose on the turn. They didn't go for half pot or for a small bet, indicating that they could go for thin value with a bunch of ace XNs trying to target my pocket pair portion of the range or weaker aces, but they went for about 80% of the pot. This line looks very strong, and of course it's very compatible with what they're trying to represent there, which is trips, flushes, the occasional slow played boats, and of course some bluffs. Now, humans tend to miss some of the thin value merge that the solver is going to use there. Specifically, the solver, if you force them to use this line, will also include some combos of ace queen without the club. But in a human logic, this combo tends to do something else. First of all, because they might bet ace queen more often than the solver on the flop, therefore getting to the turn with less ace queen combos. And second, the combo might choose a smaller size to try to get called to streets by those bluff catching hands. Another important thing is that humans might see this double check as an extremely capped range and try to exploit that. So what do I mean by that? On the flop, we're going to have a C betting range, but we checked. So it's less likely that we have big aces. We are also going to see bet some flush draws that become turn flushes. And also on the turn, we're going to open the action with some of those big ends. So once we check twice, while it's true that we still have some slow plays, like for example, top boat with pocket aces, we can have some flushes also that decide to slow play. We can have some big aces with the club. But most of our range will be medium strength value, which can either be pocket pairs or weak aces. So from a human perspective, this is a very natural spot to leverage on club blockers to start barreling. And there might be also divergences on how humans approach the river once they start bluffing on the turn. So you might see the solver giving up on the river with some bluffs, while humans instinctively, if they perceive your range as weak, they might tend to be over aggressive with those. And there's also a third factor specifically with this combo, which is hidden combinatorics, which have an impact on the discussion about the blocker impact on the river. So first of all, one natural heuristic might be to use low pocket pairs to bluff on ace-high boards in 3-bet pots. People that have some experience with solvers already have seen this line, but the solver in this case never uses pocket 5s and pocket 4s to bluff the turn. For humans, this might be more intuitive. Usually, humans like to target these weak aces, pocket pairs with those combos, because these combos unblock the pocket pairs and they block the weak aces, which are gonna call sometimes. And if they use pocket 5s, pocket 4 specifically, the 4 on the river promotes one of those bluffs to nutted hands, to value hands. Therefore, the 4 starts to matter here, as it significantly discounts the possibility that villain might have pocket 4s. So you can see it's not a single divergence, but there are 3 different deviations which all lead to the same direction. But let's break it down one by one. Where does ace queen go? Solver bets already ace queen off with a high frequency on this flop, and humans will tend to bet more often because, again, they expect ace king to mostly bet. They accept the fact that on a blank run out, ace queen can lose the stack against a slow played ace king as well. So ace queen is still a very strong hand, and they will just gonna try to extract as much value as possible. On the turn, the solver will find a bet with ace queen, specifically without the club, for a big bet, for a thin merge, and planning to shove blank rivers. For a human, again, it's possible that they would check back ace queen, of course, but very likely they're going to use another size and maybe not go for stacks. Again, in 3-bet pots, you're not forced to play for stacks. You can also use intermediate bets. Now, I'm not saying it's the case of the villain. I'm not saying it's hard for a human to split sizings, but especially when you play at 1-2, you can see some sizing tells in this regard that might push the line towards a more polarized approach in this case with the very big bet. On the river, the solver finds a thin value jam with ace queen that got there, while a human again might go for a 3/4, 2/3 of the pot bet. So the human is more polarized than the solver on this turn with his bet size. And we can see exactly that solver is using this ace queen specifically without the club because it wants to induce some hero calls by pocket queens with the club on the river, so it doesn't want to block the queen of clubs. Another important factor is the bluffing region. Again, the solver is using king queen offsuit with the club and king jack offsuit with the club, almost pure. Well, we cannot say it will be a mistake to bet them pure on the turn, but it's important for what we'll see on the river. And also, as anticipated, the solver is never using pocket 5s and pocket 4s, but unintuitively choosing pocket 8s and pocket 7s. So, from a human perspective, it's much easier to choose these combinations. But again, I'm not saying that this player specifically or your opponents are going to find this bluff. I'm saying that people that study with solver know this theme and they can use it. And on the river, we can see a very important thing. So, ace queen is always going for the shove once we take this line, but king queen and king jack are mixing some give-ups. So there is a portion of the range where humans might again diverge from solver. And if we put all these pieces together, we can see that while the solver is trying to be sort of balanced and balancing the range towards a polarized range, which essentially makes our 4 blocker sort of useless there because the value range is going to be mostly trips and flushes, a human might have too many bluffs to support a value range which is kind of narrow already in theory, but it will be even narrower in practice if we discount the ace-queen combos, if we expect maybe that flush draws will bet a bit more often on the flop, therefore if villain checks back, they might have a bit less flushes in the range. But of course, this is all speculation right now. The three factors are these again. The ace queen type of value, the thin value, is very likely not in the jamming range on this line. The second factor is that turn bluffs, specifically king queen and king jack with a club, are going to follow through on this line while the solver is sometimes giving up, and this massively shifts the number of bluffing combos there. And then there are those heuristic bluffs that might be there from a human perspective, but the solver doesn't have, and such as pocket fives and 5-4 suited. Of course, pocket fours doesn't count as a bluff anymore because right now pocket fours becomes a nutted hand on the river. And if we do a breakdown of what Wieland's river jam looks like, we have the value portion, of course, adjusting for population tendencies, which is constructed by flushes, which again, they will split between bet flop and check flop and then go on the bet turn line. And there is a chance that the player might think that we will not check raise almost ever this board, because in general, on ace-high board, we tend to see bet a lot of strong hands. So in general, the check line is a bit more passive than on boards which are not good for us, where like low boards where we will have very aggressive check raising with overpairs. So you might feel protected to bet the flop and maybe sometimes check turn or follow through if they don't improve. But still, there is also this discrepancy which might decrease flushes combos on the turn. Then there are trips, which of course are betting the turn. And then there's pocket fours, which it may bluff the turn, and of course if it gets on the river, it's always jamming for value. On the other hand, we have the bluffs, which we already mentioned, this king queen with a club, king jack with a club, and the possible pocket fives, pocket fours. So the four blocker comes into help here because solver never has pocket fours in this line, in any street. But again, humans might bluff this combo because they leverage the fold equity they might have and they try to target exactly these pocket pairs. So the four of diamonds will promote the bluff to a boat. And right now, the ace-4 becomes relevant because it's removing value combo. And we're blocking value combos that exist only because of how humans deviate and because how they selected few streets earlier. But how is the decision going to shift? We can node lock to make sure that the solver will always jam these ones, for example. So we have a pure shove, and our hand becomes a very profitable pure call, despite not even touching the ace-queen combo, which, of course, if we also remove ace-queen, the EV of this call would be even higher. But theory is theory, and the life at the tables can show something else. Our reads can be correct, our reads to be wrong. In this case, I decided to follow my gut and go ahead with the call. And Wieland showed up, king of clubs, queen of diamonds, and we win a very nice spot. Maybe my read is not correct, but the main thing is to understand and have a clear picture of what the range looks like there and make your own decisions. Sometimes you'll be wrong. Most of the times you'll be right and have very nice spots. Like and subscribe if you want to find more situations in which humans diverge for equilibrium and find the hidden edge.